everybody. I want to welcome you to our first interview for the new social worker. My name is Jennifer Luna, and I am your social work career coach. I write a column, and I'm so excited to have with me today Lauren Gutierrez, who is a school social worker. She is also a content creator and host of the Social Work Scrapbook, and she's a clinical supervisor who focuses on school social workers. So welcome today, Laura.
Hi.
Lauren.
Yes, Lauren, it is. How are
Welcome,
you?
Lauren. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good as well.
It's so exciting to have you. Lauren was actually a student of mine and graduated from Steve Hicks School of Social Work. And it's so exciting to have you in this space. And when I talked to Linda about this opportunity, you were the first person that came to mind. So thank you very much for being here.
I'm so excited to be here and to add whatever I can to this space that y'all are creating. I'm excited for it.
Excellent. Well, Lauren, would you start today by telling us a little bit about your experience becoming a social worker and then how you chose to become a school social worker?
Yes. So I did go to the University of Texas for my bachelor's, and that wasn't in social work, which I get a lot of questions from newer social or soon to become social workers if I have my bachelor's in social work. My bachelor's is actually in psychology, but throughout the first few years, being from a pretty low performing and low economic public school district myself, I was like a fish out of water, and it was kind of hard to get my bearings at a big university like UT Austin. And as I was there, I was kind of guided by a lot of advisors, and one of them mentioned to me, you should take some courses, some electives your first few years so that you get a good idea of what you want to do afterwards. And so I had narrowed it down to school counselor, possibly a therapist of some sort, and maybe even a newscaster. So it was like some random little pieces there that I was like, well, so I took a course in intro to communication. I took a sociology class, and then I took an intro to social work class. And it was really that intro to social work class that really opened my eyes to how vast the field of social work is, because I thought it was about one thing, which is what most people assume, which is child protective services or children's welfare. And I was like, that's really not what I want to do. However, my professor there at the Steve Hicks School of Social Work was a person that I interviewed to get more insight on the field. And she mentioned to me that I could really blend some of what I wanted to do, which was therapy plus school counseling, as a school social worker. And I had no idea school social workers existed. And she mentioned that the School of Social Work there at UT was one that had some really great leading professors in that space there in Austin. So at that point is when she kind of mentioned you should continue on to the master's. So I did that. I went straight through. I actually finished my bachelor's in 3 years, and I was
Oh,
super
wow.
excited to start the master's program, just jump right in. So no breaks in between, just straight from the bachelor's to the master's program. And it was a really good decision, something I have really been just thanking my lucky stars that I was connected to the right people during that first year as a first gen student there at UT.
And then how did you navigate your way as a student to focus on school social work?
I spoke a little bit to the type of school district that I went to growing up. It was very at risk. I actually read about it in many of my courses there at UT. It's Edgewood ISD. And there was just a lot of injustices happening there. Us not having the equal amount of education that we were seeing in neighboring school districts, other districts across the state. And I really felt that it was part of my journey to give back to those students, to show them that it doesn't matter what sort of limitations you may have in your neighborhood or even within your schools, we can still make it into spaces of higher education. So I really wanted to go back to the schools to create some partnerships with the schools and help students that look like me, that came from my same neighborhoods, feel like the sky's the limit, like you can continue to go because it's very much possible. So that was always the end goal. And I'm happy now to be working within not the school district that I graduated from, but one that's very similar, in fact, just a few zip codes away, and also just as in need of this message that I'm still trying to put out there.
Excellent.
Mhm.
So as a school social worker, can you tell me how you, uh, for lack of better words, brand yourself so that administrators, teachers, counselors, students, families know what you do? I've seen in the past with working with many school social workers that you really serve the whole community, not just the students. Can you give us some tips on how you navigate that?
I sure can. This is a big question that I get from a lot of newer school social workers because our jobs don't always have the same titles within and around different school districts in my city, let alone the state and the country. We go by different names, we have different roles. And so the way I explain it to students in a very, I guess, basic term, if I'm explaining to students, families, even administrators, is that I am that link between the home and the school. And so what I do is I will meet with parents, do home visits, which is a big part of my job, even throughout this pandemic, which has made it a little bit harder with all the restrictions and, of course, the safety protocols we have to put in place. But I'm in the home working with students and families, getting a good glimpse of their environments and where they're coming from. And then I take that information, confidentiality in mind as well, to the schools to help teachers and administrators and school staff that want the very best for these students as well, to help clear out any barriers and to make sure that the students that are sitting in the desks, throughout the week are the best that they can be. So a lot of, and that's why I enjoy school social work, because it is holistic. A lot of times it's
Yes.
finding hygiene items, food items, clothing for students to make sure that's not something they're needing for and preventing them from coming to school. So I'm able to kind of link those two things together so we can have our students in class, hopefully not concerned about those outside factors that they really can't control.
Was there anything that you didn't expect when you became a school social worker that things maybe that you tell your interns now that best advice or things that they may not have expected? I know a lot of times people think,
Yeah.
oh, summer's off and it must be such a great job. And so what are some things that some advice you would like to give for those choosing this career?
Oh, this is such a good question. I definitely, what I didn't expect is to kind of be an island to myself. I in the program at graduate school, of course, I did my internships within the school system as well, but I always had a team with me. It was a team of social workers combating homelessness, or I was interned with communities in schools. So it was a team of interns and our program facilitator there, providing services and counseling to students there at an elementary level. And being a school social worker, I think on your own, you don't realize that you're really going to it's all on you. There's one social worker, sometimes for the whole district, is what I hear
Wow.
some school social workers in, or one social worker for two different campuses or multiple campuses. And so there's really not um, that team approach that I was used to. And now it's just all on me. And then I really had to seek out ways to collaborate with professionals that were doing what I was doing in their own capacity. So it can get lonely, and it can kind of wear down at you a little bit if you don't create a good support system. That's my best advice, is to get a mentor, or to get some sort of school social work team together that you at least can collaborate with and even vent about some of the things that we're seeing, especially in the past few years.
Oh, I bet, especially with us going remote and
Mhm.
the racial injustice and so many things have happened this past couple of years.
Yes,
I think we've all grown as social workers in
for
different
sure.
capacities. Could
Mhm.
you tell me also what are the next steps for you? So for those choosing a career in school social work, what would that career path look like?
Oh, the field is so vast. As I mentioned, school social work is a tiny little piece of it, and that's what grabbed my heart, is all the reasons that I'm sharing today, being able to connect to students and kind of be that first line. However, I've gone on to, some of my career goals starting off was to gain a clinical license and become a supervisor as well, to help other LMSWs gain their clinical licensure. And so those two goals I have checked off. I did get my clinical license within my second year of becoming a school social worker, and
Wow.
then now I provide supervision. So those are kind of my goals, is to kind of expand on that and do more clinical type work within the school and with students. And due to the pandemic and all the instances that we just mentioned, there is a push for more mental health within the schools. So we're very marketable right now in independent school districts, and just working with students all around across the board.
I really like that you were able to get the LCSW or the clinical license within 2 years, because I think there's a big misconception that school social workers don't do clinical work. So that's excellent. And I do agree with you about the mental health issues. And we're hoping funding is going to go that way towards more social workers in that field. Uh,
Mhm.
let's segue right into your supervision. What do you enjoy about being a supervisor?
Oh, I love being as transparent as possible. When I'm in the supervision seat with a fellow colleague, I want to be sure. I think the main important part is to make sure that I'm transparent and I share some of my limitations, so that this supervisee is able to share what they're struggling with as well. Because I've sat in the seats as a supervisee, really holding a little bit of imposter syndrome. Should I be doing this? Is this my path? Am I going to be good at this? Am I going to mess someone's life up? And all those questions kind of come up as you're learning. And I try to be as transparent as possible, let them know that yes, these things are happening, but breaking down that therapy window and helping them create their own styles, so that we can decrease that imposter syndrome that naturally comes up because you're trying something different and new and pushing yourself to another level. So I really like to be on that journey with newer, fresh LMSWs that are exploring this field. And it allows me to see it from a new perspective as well each time, given the different supervisees that I work with.
And what a wonderful impact to have on future social workers.
Mhm.
Uh,
I'm hoping. Yes, I'm
yes,
hoping.
no, for sure. Um, what advice would you give for social workers who are seeking their clinical license in terms of finding a good supervisor?
Oh, I think that takes a little shopping around. Supervisors, it's really hard to sometimes find a good directory of supervisors. So sometimes the university you graduated from might have a directory of some sorts. You may be able, I know that you can search up in your state board and kind of see who has that designation, whether they're certified to do the supervision. So just number one would be making sure that that person has the credentials to be your supervisor. And then two, doing a short 15-minute Zoom session, if you can, telephone session or in person, to see if your personalities match, and whether their theories and kind of the practices that they have in place, whether they mesh with your own, because there are so many different perspectives to take. So you want to make sure that that's also aligned. and that you're comfortable around their personality, because it is 2 years or more of working closely with someone and staffing some really difficult situations and some new situations you're putting yourself into.
Great, excellent. Are
Mhm.
there any questions that you would recommend that social workers seeking supervision might ask to get to the, um, say, the first gen cultural piece of helping clients and being the best that you can um, as a clinical social worker?
Mhm. Yeah, I think some of the questions to kind of keep in mind are, um, are you speaking to the sense of in locating a supervisor or in speaking with a client?
I'm speaking with in terms of cultural competency.
Okay. Yeah, and this is a huge topic. And I think that within the different communities that I've built here in my social media space on YouTube and Instagram and all of the various social media spaces that are provided to us now, I this topic, because of all the injustices we have come to the surface, much literally that we can see, we're really looking to see how culturally humble a person can be, and trying to see whether that person is able and willing to step into a zone where they are not only questioning that the other person's culture and their history and their family dynamics, but also one's own. So it kind of takes that space of curiosity, I would say. So it's more like a cultural curiosity, a leaning on and leaning toward to learn from each other is what I would be looking for when I'm trying to designate whether I'm going to work with someone or whether it's a safe space to be in, is giving that space and that humility that there's not one right way to do something in the sense of someone's values and culture.
Oh, that's excellent. I heard cultural humility, I heard
Mhm.
curiosity and humbleness, and that just embodies a great supervisor in my eyes.
Mm.
So you spoke a little bit about your social media spaces, and I'd kind of like to touch on that just for a bit. I think that this is one of the elements of Lauren Gutierrez that is just amazing, that you have a thriving practice, supervision practice,
Mhm.
you're a school social worker, and you're somewhat of a social media star. So in social work, and so, would you tell us a little bit about the Social Work Scrapbook?
Sure. Yes, I'd love to. So this is something that I started back in, I feel like 4 or 5 years ago now. And it blends in my love, as I was talking to you about wanting to kind of be a newscaster and work in communications of that sort. I kind of blended that in towards, I'd say, the fourth or fifth year of my social work career, really being hungry for those connections that I spoke about. I had hosted a few interns as a school social worker in my district and was teaching a lot. And I really, after they graduated and went on, I was missing that kind of connection to students and to other social workers. Working kind of siloed, as I mentioned, as a school social worker. And I decided to create a YouTube channel and a social media space on Instagram where I document um, just the days in my life. I have a few vlogs on there, which I know a lot of students really like to see in order to kind of gain perspective on how the day of a school social worker looks. And so I have some of those fun things up there, but also it's allowed me to collaborate with a lot of social workers from around um, my state, but also the United States and beyond as well. So it's just a beautiful kind of growing organically a community of social workers and soon to be social workers that are coming together and really sharing different insights and perspectives. I have a few interviews on there myself, where I'm interviewing social workers from different populations, because I started getting a lot of questions about what about medical social work? What
Oh,
about
wow.
mental health? What about, child welfare? So there's just so many directions, and it's opened my eyes to and kind of built a nice growing community there.
And how did you know when you were really hitting it off with your audience. And I'm kind of speaking to your followers, and I've seen your social media packet. It's just amazing.
Uh, yes. Like I mentioned in supervision, I'm transparent, but on my social media spaces, I try to be as transparent as possible as well. And I think that's refreshing to a lot of practicing social workers that have been in the field for several years are kind of really getting a glimpse of it. Because like I mentioned, we're all working just kind of with blinders on and doing this incredible work. However, we don't get to kind of check in on our peers and our partners and colleagues. And this is a way to kind of see how it's looking, at least from my world and what I'm doing. That's why I call it a scrapbook. I've always really loved collecting memories, and that's kind of my self-care as well, is to reflect back. So I figured if I put this in a YouTube space, in a social media space, it will be a place for other social workers to kind of get a glimpse, but also reflect back on their own time that they did their first home visit, or their own time that they were faced front to front with a new client of some sort, or a teenage client, those harder to reach clients, and just kind of bringing light to that. And I know that that's always something that people, they like to see that behind the scenes, and that transparency. That's how I try to keep it for my audience and whoever's tuning in and watching.
Definitely. I think that your space is unique because it's for us, it's for social workers, and it's a great place for advice and great tips, very practical, but also it could be a great space to explain what social workers do. Because I know sometimes, we have family members or partners,
Mhm.
friends who say, well, why would you want to go into that career? And I think your space really represents a great explanation of all the things that we do and the value that we add.
Thank you. That's so great to hear.
Um, so just to wrap up, I
Mhm.
want to thank you so much for being here today. I would love for you to give a shout out to your Instagram and YouTube channel. And we'll also be posting that at the end on a slide.
Yes, sure. So my YouTube channel is Social Work Scrapbook, and so is my Instagram handle. It's at Social Work Scrapbook. Those are two spaces where I shared. You can kind of get a glimpse into the things that I'm doing, working intervention wise with students. I share a lot of my school social work space on there, and as well as how I'm starting to share more this year how I started my channel, how I started the social media space, because I think that there are more social workers out there that are wanting to share, which I love. So I'm going to be kind of sharing a little bit more on there as far as how I got started and materials you need, all that kind of stuff too. But I'd be happy to kind of have any connection with your audience here and kind of help out however I can.
Thank you so much. And I will
Mhm.
definitely be following the advice that you're giving on social media. You were really one of my inspirations of doing this interview series. So thank you so much. And
Thank
thank you
you.
all for watching. And we will be back next month with another interview.